My name is Dr. Alina Grady, or at least it used to be. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. There was a time not too long ago when that name meant something. I was a cardiothoracic surgeon, board certified, highly respected, and known for staying calm even in the most chaotic emergency situations. The kind of doctor people wanted on call when life was slipping through their fingers. Now I'm the woman who lost her license. The woman who killed a patient on the table because she ignored protocol. The woman whose husband stood in front of the medical board and described, in devastating detail, how she had panicked under pressure and refused to listen to the anesthesia team. My hands were steady that day, my heart clear. But none of that mattered when Ryan opened his mouth and told the story his way. I can still hear the final words from the board chair. We find sufficient evidence of negligence to warrant full revocation. That was 2 years ago. And in those 2 years I've learned how to be invisible. I work nights at a data review firm. Mostly malpractice reports, case summaries, and insurance evaluations. They pay well for discretion and expertise, even from someone former. Keep my head down. I don't argue. I wear glasses and tie my hair back. I don't go by Dr. Grady anymore. I go by Lena. Just Lena. I live in a 1-bedroom rental above a flower shop in Portland. My diploma is in a box at the back of a closet. I haven't touched a scalpel in 743 days. But life has a cruel sense of timing. Because 2 weeks ago, I received an encrypted file from a law firm I'd never heard of, asking me to assist in the review of an ongoing high-risk malpractice claim. And the name on the primary surgeon, Dr. Ryan Grady. First I thought it was a mistake. Sick coincidence. But the case was real. A 34-year-old woman named Cassandra Wells died on the table during a routine mitral valve repair. Internal bleeding. Sudden cardiac arrest. Her family was suing the hospital, and more specifically Ryan, for negligence. The legal team wanted me to review the surgery timeline, identify any procedural deviations, and summarize whether another surgeon would have acted differently. They didn't know who I was to him. They just saw my credentials. Well, my former credentials. I stared at the email for almost an hour. Then I did something I never thought I'd do again. Clicked accept. The file was thick. Over 500 pages of surgical logs, imaging, nurse statements, witness interviews, and device tracking timestamps. But it wasn't until I reached the anesthesiology notes that my fingers started to tremble. The timings were off. The anesthesia was logged as starting 4 minutes earlier than the oxygenation process. That made no sense. Standard protocol requires them to happen within 30 seconds of each other, max. And then I saw it. The same inconsistency I had pointed out in the case that got me fired. The one Ryan denied ever existed. The one he said I fabricated in a moment of panic. It was here, on the page. Documented. I barely slept that night. My heart was racing, my thoughts spinning. Could it be? Was this the same pattern? The same technique mismatch? And if so, was it possible that Cassandra Wells died the same way my patient did 2 years ago, but this time, without me to take the fall? I didn't want to believe it. Even after everything Ryan had done, I didn't want to believe he could be that calculated, that selfish, that cruel. But the next file sealed it. An internal memo, flagged confidential, written by a surgical tech who had been pulled mid-surgery due to a disagreement with lead surgeon over protocol. The note said she had concerns about the dosage level of anesthetics administered prior to full stabilization. And then I saw her name, Megan Doyle. She had worked on the surgery that got me suspended. I remembered her. Quiet, competent, always early. The board never let her testify back then. Said her statements were non-material. And now here she was again trying to flag a similar concern, and again removed from the room. This time I wasn't going to let that slide. I didn't go to the firm. I didn't file the report. Not yet. Instead, I went to find Megan. It took 4 phone calls and 2 favors to track her down. She'd moved to a smaller hospital in Eugene, working the night shift in the ER. When I finally reached her, she hesitated. Then softly she said, "I was wondering when someone would ask." We met at a diner just off the freeway. She looked older than I remembered. Tired, guarded, like someone who had carried something heavy for too long. "I knew it," she said as soon as we Saturday. "I knew you didn't mess up that surgery." Blinked. "Why didn't you speak up?" "I tried," she whispered. "They didn't want to hear it. Ryan was the star. You were expendable." I sat in silence as she pulled out her phone and opened a secure app. I saved the notes. From both surgeries. The anesthesia timelines. The monitor readouts. I knew something was wrong. She slid the phone toward me. My hand trembled as I read the screen. And that's when I saw it. Cassandra's oxygen saturation had dropped 2 full minutes before anyone intervened. Just like in my case. There was no doubt anymore. Ryan had done it again. And now someone had died. The next step was clear. I contacted the law firm representing the Wells family and requested a meeting. They were surprised at first. "You're the medical reviewer?" the associate asked. "Yes," I said. "But I also used to be his wife. And I think I have evidence that will change everything." I handed them a sealed packet with Megan's notes, the original timestamps, and a timeline I'd built comparing Cassandra's case to mine, side by side. The patterns were unmistakable. The deviations identical. The room went silent. Then the lead attorney leaned forward and said, "Would you be willing to testify?" I looked him dead in the eye. "Yes. But I won't just testify." I pulled out a smaller envelope, one I hadn't told anyone about. "I have a copy of Ryan's handwritten statement from 2 years ago." He said I ignored protocol. But in this copy, someone underlined a different line. Something the board overlooked. I opened it, my voice steady. "He signed this statement under oath. But he also signed another form that contradicts it. Supply chain log, timestamp 3 minutes earlier. He knew about the anesthetic delay. And he tried to hide it." The attorney blinked. "That's perjury." "No," I said softly. "That's malpractice, cover-up, and perjury. And now he'll have to answer for all of it." The hearing wasn't public yet. But the whispers had already started. A few articles appeared in minor medical publications. Prominent surgeon named in malpractice suit following unexpected death. They didn't name Ryan outright, not yet, but they mentioned the hospital, the department, and the procedure. Anyone in our field could put 2 and 2 together. I waited for the call from him. It came at 10:47 p.m. on a Thursday. I didn't answer. Then came the text. "Ryan, why are you doing this? Ryan, we could both go down. Ryan, I didn't mean for it to happen. Please, just talk to me." I stared at the screen for a long time. I almost deleted them without a word. But instead I typed back 2 lines. "You had your chance to tell the truth. You chose silence. I won't." And then I blocked him. The Wells family's legal team moved fast. Within a week, they'd secured a preliminary court date, scheduled an evidentiary review, and filed to reopen the investigation into my own case as part of a pattern of behavior motion. It was an aggressive move. I liked it. But I also knew what would come next. Ryan wasn't the kind of man to go down quietly. He'd fight. And he'd fight dirty. The first strike came through my former hospital's HR department. They issued a formal statement claiming I was revisiting a previously closed case out of personal grievance, and suggesting that I had obtained internal files illegally. It was laughable. I had accessed everything through proper legal channels. But the suggestion was there, that I was bitter, untrustworthy, maybe even unstable. The media picked it up fast. Disgraced ex-surgeon resurfaces in new case involving former husband. I walked into the Wells family's law office 2 days later, and the receptionist looked nervous just taking my name. But when I sat down with their legal team, I wasn't shaking. I was furious, focused. "We can use this," the attorney said calmly, reviewing the articles. "If they want to make you the story, we'll make sure you're ready." So I did what I hadn't done in over 2 years. I studied Every night, I sat at my kitchen table. One light on, files spread across the surface, legal pads scribbled with timelines and annotated diagrams. I mapped every step of Cassandra's surgery against standard practice, against the surgical logs, and against Ryan's own deposition. And the gaps grew more obvious the closer I looked. He had lied. Not once. Not vaguely. Repeatedly. In one section, he claimed he initiated cardiac bypass at 10:06. But the machine logs showed the first oxygenation at 10:09, a full 3 minutes later. In another, he said the patient's vitals were stable at the time of incision. But a nurse's note at 10:04 marked O2 saturation dipping, pending clearance. The worst part. There were initials beside that note. Ryan Grady. He had seen the warning. And cut anyway. The Wells family was composed of quiet strength. Cassandra's mother, Teresa, reminded me of a Midwestern nurse. Her eyes were red but clear. Her voice didn't shake when she said, "We just want the truth. Not revenge. Not money. Just truth." Cassandra had been 34. A schoolteacher. Healthy. Engaged. She walked into that hospital to correct a minor congenital valve defect. She never walked out. And now, finally, the truth was circling back around. But it didn't come cleanly. Because someone else came forward. Started with an email. Subject: Re Cassandra Wells case. From a private account, no name. You're not the only one he ruined. I hesitated before opening the attachment. It was a scanned report from 5 years ago, related to a surgical resident named Alex Navarro, dismissed from the program for reckless disregard for procedural hierarchy. But hidden in the margins was something curious. A note scribbled in the reviewing physician's comments. Resident Navarro objected to dosage volume. Dr. Grady proceeded without amendment. Another objection. Another dismissal. Another life derailed. I traced the source of the email and got lucky. Alex still lived in Oregon, working in medical tech sales now. We met for coffee. He was lean, anxious, with a tremor in his right hand he tried to hide. "I didn't even want to be in medicine anymore after that," he said bitterly. "Ryan made sure no program would touch me. Said I had an attitude problem. But I just didn't want someone to die because no one had the guts to question him." He nodded. "You were right," I said. He did it again. Alex stared at the table. Then, slowly, he pulled out his old residency journal. He'd kept it. He turned to the week of the surgery and tapped a paragraph where he'd noted down Ryan's instructions. And the moment Alex refused to follow them. "You think that helps?" he asked. I met his eyes. "It helps everything." 3 days before the hearing, Ryan went on the offensive. He issued a formal press statement. Called me a disgruntled former spouse, with an obsession with his downfall. He denied all wrongdoing. He called Cassandra's death a tragic and unforeseeable complication. And he said I was weaponizing grief to settle a personal score. I didn't respond. But someone else did. That same day, a nurse named Jillian Say submitted an anonymous complaint to the hospital board. One that included screenshots of internal messages, time-stamped or notes, and most importantly, a risk assessment log that showed Cassandra should have been flagged as unstable prior to incision, but the warning was manually overridden. By Ryan. The final image showed his login ID and the exact moment he changed the flag from critical to stable. The timestamp. 10:03 a.m. 1 minute before the O2 levels dropped. I didn't sleep the night before the hearing. I laid awake, watching the streetlights cut golden lines across my ceiling. There were so many ways this could go wrong. So many people in power who would rather sweep it under the rug. But I reminded myself of something Megan had said over coffee. He never thought you'd fight back. That's why he chose you. And now here we were. The courtroom was a beige, windowless box. Ryan arrived in a gray suit with a crisp blue tie and an expensive lawyer beside him. He looked polished, tired, arrogant. When they called my name, I stood without flinching. I took the oath, sat down, breathed in. And then I told them everything. Began with my own case. Walked them through the surgical logs, the inconsistencies, the lies. Then I introduced Megan's notes. Then Alex's journal. Then Jillian's anonymous screenshots. With every document, every timestamp, every contradiction, I felt the room's temperature shift. By the time I reached the oxygenation delay, present in both surgeries, the panel of board reviewers looked pale. Then came the final blow. A recording. One I hadn't mentioned in advance. Jillian had provided it. A voice memo accidentally captured on her smartwatch, left running in the locker room after Cassandra's surgery. Ryan's voice was unmistakable. I should have waited. She wasn't stable. But I couldn't risk another delay. Not with the pharma rep in the gallery. The room was silent. My voice didn't tremble as I said, Cassandra Wells died because Dr. Grady was protecting his metrics, not his patient. And I lost my license because he needed a scapegoat once before. The judge leaned forward. We will need time to review. But based on this initial evidence, this board will recommend an immediate reopening of the original revocation proceedings against Dr. Alina Grady. My breath caught. And then came the second sentence. And the suspension of Dr. Ryan Grady's license pending full investigation of these findings. He turned to me as I walked past him. His voice low, bitter. You think this fixes anything? Stop. No, I said. But it finally exposes it. The recommendation came faster than I expected. Just 1 week after the hearing, the medical board sent me a certified letter. The envelope trembled in my hands as I opened it. Following review of new and material evidence, the Oregon State Board of Medical Practice formally acknowledges the wrongful revocation of Dr. Alina Grady's medical license. Effective immediately, Dr. Grady's license is reinstated, with full privileges pending updated certification hours. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at it. The words were there. Plain, clinical. No apology. No emotion. Just bureaucratic reversal. But it still felt like a heartbeat restarting after flatline. I was a doctor again. Not ex, not former. Not disgraced. Dr. Alina Grady. The Wells family reached out 2 days later. They didn't want to talk about the lawsuit or the hearings. Teresa Wells simply said, "Thank you," over the phone. And then, "Cassandra would have liked you. She never let people like that get away with anything either." I held the phone against my chest for a full minute after the call ended. Ryan, on the other hand, was unraveling. Once the board moved to suspend his license, the media turned fast. Articles shifted from "misunderstood genius surgeon" to "repeat pattern of negligence." Former colleagues speak out. Former residents came forward. So did 2 anesthesiologists who had filed internal complaints years ago, ones that mysteriously never reached HR. Now the hospital was in panic mode. An independent inquiry was launched. Insurance partners withdrew. A lawsuit was filed not just by the Wells family, but by 4 others whose surgeries bore similar patterns. And Ryan, he issued a statement through a lawyer, deeply saddened by the mischaracterization of events. But no apology, no ownership, not yet. When the day of the civil trial arrived, I wasn't planning to attend. I'd already testified, already submitted my findings, but something pulled me there. Maybe it was closure, or curiosity, or the need to see the ending with my own eyes. The courtroom was full. Media, medical professionals, former patients. Ryan sat beside his legal team, looking gaunt. A shadow of the man he used to be. And then something unexpected happened. His father walked in. I hadn't seen Charles Grady in years. He was a retired physician, once the chief of surgery at a renowned New York hospital, and deeply respected in the field. He had always treated me warmly, always seemed proud of my work. He walked straight to the witness stand. The courtroom hushed. "I came here today because my son has refused to tell the truth," Charles said, voice steady. "I read the transcripts. I reviewed the surgical logs. And I can no longer stay silent." He paused. "When Alina first married into our family, I was proud. She was brilliant, kind, strong. I saw the kind of doctor I had once hoped Ryan would become. But somewhere along the way, ambition twisted him. And when faced with failure, he chose to lie. The judge leaned forward. "Dr. Grady, are you submitting this as sworn testimony?" Charles nodded. "Yes. And I'm also submitting these." He handed a thick envelope to the court clerk. "Internal emails. From the hospital's private server. My son copied me on several threads, by accident. In them, he discusses altering oxygenation records, bypass timing, and managing optics after high-risk outcomes. Including Cassandra Wells." Ryan visibly paled. Charles continued. "I didn't want to believe it. I tried to reason with him. But I see now, this is the only way to protect the integrity of our profession, and honor the memory of the patients who didn't survive." The courtroom was silent. You could hear breathing. And then Ryan did something none of us expected. He stood. And without prompting, without whispering to his lawyer, he said, "I did it." Gasps rippled across the room. "I altered the flags. I ignored the warnings. I didn't want another surgical delay because I knew a journal review was coming up. I needed the data clean." His voice cracked. "I didn't mean for Cassandra to die. But I made the choices that led to it." He turned toward the judge. "I'll accept whatever penalty this court hands me. But I won't fight it anymore." And then, eyes scanning the crowd, they landed on me. "I blamed the wrong person once. And I cost her everything." It was over after that. The court suspended Ryan's license indefinitely, pending criminal review. The Wells family received a settlement large enough to create a foundation in Cassandra's name. The hospital launched a full investigation and made sweeping changes to its internal audit process. And me. I went home, sat with a cup of coffee, and let the weight of everything sink in. 3 months later I returned to the OR. Not as a surgeon. Not yet. As an observer. A volunteer mentor for final-year med students at a teaching hospital that had offered me a path back through recertification and supervised hours. I didn't wear a white coat that day. Just a clean blouse and slacks, clipboard in hand. But when I stepped into that room, smelled the disinfectant, saw the glint of the surgical lights, heard the rhythm of the monitors, I felt something click back into place. Belonged here. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I wanted glory. But because this is what I was built for. And now no one could take that away again. Later that week, after a long shift, I returned home to find a small envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a flash drive. The note read, "There's one more case you should see. Different hospital. Same pattern. Might be more victims. You weren't the only one he used." No signature. I looked at the flash drive, heart pounding. It wasn't over. But this time I wasn't scared. 'Cause this time I had my name back. I had my strength. And I had the truth on my side. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story and tell us where you're watching from.